Vilsak, el exsecretario de Agricultura de Estados Unidos con Obama y actual titular del Consejo de Exportación Lechera de Estados Unidos, platicó en exclusiva para el financiero Bloomberg sobre los beneficios del Tratado de Libre Comercio de América del Norte al sector lechero y la importancia de México para nuestro país vecino del norte en este mercado con un intercambio comercial de más de $1.000 millones.
Well, it's our #1 dairy market for exports. It's an incredibly important market. It's over $1 billion of sales. It's a relationship that goes beyond a buyer-seller relationship. It's a deep connection with dairy producers and processors in Mexico and helps to support not just dairy farmers in the U.S., but it's increasing consumption in Mexico, which also provides assistance and help for dairy producers in Mexico. It's also supporting over 30,000 jobs in the U.S. Well, very simply, we need to preserve and strengthen and protect the relationship that we have with Mexico and dairy, and we need to make sure that we expand, strengthen the relationship that we have with Canada. The fact is that market in Canada is not as open, not as fair, it's not as transparent as the one in Mexico, and we'd like to see greater parallels between the Canadian market and the Mexican market. Well, I think first and foremost, it's important to focus on actions and not words. And in the Mexican-American dairy relationship, we have had a long-standing relationship where we've been with Mexican producers and processors during good times and difficult times. We've helped to grow the market. As I said earlier, the relationship is not just a buyer and seller relationship, which is what you may have with New Zealand and the EU. It is a deeper relationship. It is a partnership that's helping to grow the market, to encourage more consumption, to figure out ways in which we can assist dairy producers in Mexico to be more productive as well. So I would hope that the Mexican officials would see the depth and the significance of the relationship and would not take action before there has been a renegotiation and a conversation over how to modernize and strengthen NAFTA. Well, I would sincerely hope that that would not be the case and that we wouldn't do anything in the U.S. to precipitate or to suggest or to encourage the Mexican officials to take those steps. I think it would be counterproductive. We have conveyed to the Trump administration and to officials in the Trump administration the importance of preserving and protecting the relationship between Mexico and the U.S. as it relates to dairy, and frankly, that extends beyond dairy to other agricultural products. We've had a good, solid relationship where trade in agricultural products has grown on both sides of the border. We want to preserve that. I think we have a different conversation with our Canadian friends. We want to make sure that that market is more open and more transparent as the Mexican market is. And I think if that were the case, we'd have an even stronger three-country relationship in NAFTA. Well, let me focus specifically on Canadian dairy. They have a very closed system there where the government basically dictates how much dairy and how much milk can be produced and how much can be processed. It inflates the cost of the dairy products in Canada for their consumers, and it guarantees higher prices for Canadian producers. It makes it more difficult for U.S. imports to get into Canada, and for that matter, Mexican imports as well. So we would hope that as part of the renegotiation that Canada would be willing to take a different view, to provide greater transparency, not to change the rules of the trading relationship in the middle of the relationship as they've recently done, to basically allow us better access, freer access to their markets. I think if that were to happen, again, I think the relationship with the three countries in North America would be strengthened, and it would certainly benefit, I think, producers in all three countries. Well, I don't really see the need for specific renegotiation with the Mexicans. I think there's one area that we are deeply concerned about, and I think the Mexican government is concerned about as well, which is protecting and the way in which you protect, or the way in which you ensure that geographic indicators, the ability to focus on tequila, for example, in Mexico, certain products that have a specific connection to geography. How do you go about providing the opportunity to trademark or brand that geographic indicator without necessarily closing off or making it more difficult? The EU would like to see Mexico enter into agreements in which they would restrict the use of certain cheese names to only European cheeses, Parmesan, Gorgonzola, things of that nature. We are deeply concerned that that will stifle the markets. It will be counterproductive to the relationship. And we, I think, negotiated a pretty good arrangement as far as geographic indicators through the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement. We'd like to see that that system or that structure incorporated in a modernized and renewed NAFTA agreement. Well, I think one way to make sure that those communities are not impacted negatively is to preserve the relationship we have, specifically in agriculture and dairy, with our Mexican processors and producers and consumers. I think it would also be beneficial to those same areas if we were able to open up and make more transparent the Canadian market for dairy. I think that would be helpful. I think there's an opportunity now, as all three countries have agreed to begin negotiations and look at a modernized NAFTA agreement. You know, anything that's more than 20 years old obviously needs to take, we need to take a look at how we might be able to resolve irritants, problems that may have arisen over the course of the 20+ years that NAFTA has been in effect. But on balance for agriculture, in all three countries, I think NAFTA has been a good agreement. I think it can be improved, I think it can be strengthened, and I think we can do it in a way that doesn't harm what is working well in NAFTA, which is certainly the relationship between Mexico and the United States and dairy.
Pues ahí tiene